With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Founded in 2018, Penelope Bourbon has been one of the country's fastest growing whiskey brands. Named after founder Michael Palladini's daughter, Penelope boasts a series of straight bourbon and rye whiskey expressions that are all uniquely blended and finished. Remarkably smooth and flavorful, Penelope is perfect whether sipping neat or mixing in a cocktail. Penelope's core expressions, 4-grain, barrel strength, architect, and toasted bourbon, have received over 35 combined awards and industry accolades. In 2023, the brand won double gold at the San Francisco World Spirit Competition and Best in category at the Ascot Awards, both for its Private Select. In addition to its cornerstone expressions, Penelope continues to introduce new and innovative limited releases within its Cooper Series, Private Select, and Founders Reserve lines. Penelope's full lineup is available in select markets as well as online. Visit penelopebourbon.com to learn more and find a store near you.
Limestone Farms bourbons are like a secret portal to a world of rich flavors where high proof meets smooth satisfaction. Every barrel is meticulously crafted and blended with a specific message in mind. Experience clean delineated flavor profiles that will have you engaged from the first sip to the final drop, making your palate beg for just one more taste. Limestone Farms, bringing heritage home.
James E. Pepper Barrel Proof Decanter Bourbon, distilled at the historic Pepper Distillery, DSP KY5 in Lexington, Kentucky. This new release, bottled in a striking recreated distillery decanter from the 1940s, has garnered high praise and accolades. Coming in at number 27 on Fred Minnick's Top 100 Whiskeys of 2023, it received a 94-point rating and was called absolutely delicious with notes of delicate hazelnut and toffee. Astor Wines, one of New York's most prestigious retailers, writes, "The whiskeys coming of age now are some of the finest from any American whiskey producer. This bourbon is arguably the most impressive you will find at this age." Available nationwide with a suggested retail price of $65. Learn more at jamesepepper.com.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there, man?
Mark, I am great. Good to be back here around the table.
Again, man, again.
We
We're
are.
like on a streak, aren't we?
We're having a good year.
Yeah, we are.
Of
This is
live
great.
shows, but
Yeah.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Other than the cold weather that set back in, you know, it's springtime in Kentucky. What do you expect, right? You never know. You
Yeah.
don't like the weather, just hang around for a few minutes and it'll change, right?
Yeah, you want to wear shorts? We'll probably be able to wear them in a few days. You want to put your jacket back on?
Yeah.
Probably be doing that in a few days anyways.
Well, and I'm glad you're wearing pants tonight. You know, that's a
Yeah,
good thing.
that's right, the pants-
We're off to a good start. You got your
Pants
pants
are
on
on.
now.
Pants
so
are on.
That's a good thing. Well, we got a really fun show tonight. I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be a good time. But I do have to say, of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their sponsorship, everything they do for us. We could not do this show without their help. And of course, we appreciate all of our sponsors as well. Check those guys out, everybody that sponsors us. Again, we couldn't bring this show to you all without all their support and help. So with that said, Matt, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
I would love to. He was a previous guest of ours and the star of episode 101 back in January of 2022.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years
Crazy.
ago.
Wow.
And 2 years and a couple months here.
Yeah.
We're really getting specific. But we are so happy and honored to have him back. He is the Master Distiller and also Distillation and Aging Operations Director at Sazerac. Danny Kahn. Danny, welcome back onto the Bourbon Life Podcast.
I am thrilled to be here. It's hard to believe it's been over 2 years.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you again in person. I've run into you, it seems like, every once in a while. And
Every so often.
Yeah. So it's always good. I'm glad you came over. Appreciate you coming over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making the
I was
trip.
like, well, we could record in person if you feel like coming over. You're like, yeah, sure, we can do that. And I'm like,
It's so much more fun.
it is. I mean, it makes, Matt and I talk about this all the time. You know, it's great when we're on a computer. It opened up so many opportunities for us when we first started the podcast, because people like you, you know, we weren't able to get together in person, and COVID was in full bloom there. So we couldn't get to people. And it really created opportunities for us, which was great. But man, it's been so much fun over the last few months that we get our guests that are like, yeah, I'd love to come and be in person. And it just makes the show, I don't know, there's just a kind of a different element to it when you get to sit around. So
so we could taste together.
we can taste together.
Absolutely. There's
Exactly.
a lot to be said about sitting around
right.
and drinking bourbon together with
Of course,
people.
I don't know. I'm kind of concerned, man. Off camera, he was telling us about the tasting panel work that he's been doing and how dialed in his palate is now, man.
Well, that's
So,
good.
Matt,
At least one of us is going to get some tasting notes right tonight then, Mark.
Well, that's not true, because you like what you like.
Oh yeah, good point.
And when we taste, there may be a blend, and we're trying to target a profile, which is different than, for example, single barrel, which is you like what you like. So you cannot be wrong in your taste.
I like that, Matt. So
shit.
make fun of me all you want.
No, I'm going
And
to
that's
tell
okay.
that to my girlfriend. I cannot be wrong for once.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, she'll find a way.
Let me know how that works for you, Matt, right?
Yeah.
Well, Danny, you were kind enough to bring us several different things we're going to be tasting through tonight. So we got something poured up for this first round. Would you like to tell everybody what we have there?
I would love to. So this was released, but it was only released to our employees at Barton 1792, and this is when I was Master Distiller at Barton 1792. And the short story is we had a handful of barrels that were sort of lost, and we don't need to get into the reasons why. I think they were lost, but they were quote unquote lost. They were up high in the rick house for about 8.5 years. They went up to about 135 proof, if memory serves me right.
Wow.
They were brought down to a cold or cooler, damp location in the warehouse, and they dropped in proof. And as a result of that, so it was moist and cool, they sort of absorbed some moisture from the surroundings, and they also absorbed some aromas and flavors of that particular warehouse.
Really?
So it was a blend of 4 barrels. We had about 520 bottles available out of those 4 barrels, so low yields. Came in at about 13 years old, not chill filtered, 96.6 proof, but it's unique and to me delicious, and a little different than the normal age 12-year 1792.
Right.
But really, really quite unique.
Very, very nice. Well, we appreciate you bringing this to share with us, and what a treat to get the 12-year-old that's actually more 13 plus years old. That'll be great. So, Danny, the way we do it, we usually just talk about the nose first, and then later in the segment we'll jump into the palate and the finish. So, Matt, and I always throw it to Matt and ask him. So, Matt, what do you?
No pressure here, right?
No pressure with Danny here, the master distiller who distilled this. So you tell me what you get on the nose, Matt.
It's got a really nice complex nose that I think hits a lot of different levels. It's got a sweet creaminess, kind of like a vanilla, taffy, nougat type creaminess, but at the same time, there's some spice coming through. Peppercorn, kind of some earthy, almost like that capsaicin or like the bell pepper, kind of like earthy vegetal spice coming through as well, which is, it's fun. Those two, kind of like the sweet and creamy and the like spicy and sharp notes really play well with each other and like take this kind of in different directions on the nose.
Okay, good.
You know, for me, I'm just gonna say, to me, I'm like picking up like a cherry, almost like a cherry crumble type of dessert, where you got like a vanilla-ish kind of topping on it, and with that, to me, it just translates to cherry and sweet. A little bit of maybe some baking spice in there, and that crumble mix on top of it. So just almost dessert-like for me.
Yeah,
so.
awesome. So the one thing that you would never, probably not associate, but the particular warehouse that this came from has got its own character, a terroir of sort. And that aroma from that warehouse, and warehouses do have a very different aroma, that aroma comes from that warehouse, and that is part of the flavor that was impacted into this. So when you talk about spicy and earthy and capsaicin, bell peppery, it's all sort of circling around that ballpark. So those are notes that are unique to that warehouse.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's got the caramels. Cherry, I absolutely get a dark, dried, concentrated cherry. And I get a little bit of a component called a lactone. And there are sort of two versions of that. And the one that I get is just a hint of toasted coconut. So there's just a little bit of that present. And that is something that I really am attracted to. So when it's present, I can pick it up, even if it's a very, very low level. And it's subtle.
Yeah.
But I find it to be there.
That's funny because you said that. And I got that kind of toastiness. And I was thinking like a cherry crumble, when you put it in the oven and you let the top get really nice and brown, kind of that toasty aroma off of it. But the coconut was eluding me. But as soon as you said that, of course, power suggestion.
Power suggestion.
Yeah, right.
Of course. But then it's like, oh yeah, there it is. I get that. So Danny, last time you were on the show, 100 plus episodes ago, you were the Master Distiller at 1792.
Yes.
And things have changed since then. Was it very long after that? Because that was January of 22. It seems like it was not too long after that you moved into your new role.
I moved into my new role, and we didn't backfill my old position yet.
Okay.
So I was still very much part of 1792. So
Gotcha.
I've been in this role really officially for about a year and a half, if my internal clock is right. It's been about a year and a half.
Gotcha. Well, can you do me a favor? And I mean, because I think it's good for our guests to get a refresher on Danny Kahn. So if you wouldn't mind, can you just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started, your experience, your education, but then also how you ended up where you are now?
How far back do you want to go?
We can go back, because I remember the last time, because we talked skateboard stories with Danny when he was on before. So you can go back as far as you want to go, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give a little snippet. But I grew up near a brewery. And when you drive by the brewery as a kid, you get different smells. And I'll cut forward a little bit, but I ended up working at that brewery out of college. And then I very much learned what this particular smell was. It was a certain part of the cooking process that we do in distillation. And then this other smell was a different part of the cooking process. So I learned all these smells, but even as a kid, as a 5-year-old kid, I loved the smell of the brewery. And right next to the brewery was a bakery. And I hated the smell of the bakery, that buttery, it was too rich, and everybody would open their vents when in the car, they went by the bakery, and they'd close them when they went by the brewery. I was just the opposite as a child.
Yeah.
So I was attracted to the fermentations and the smell. So let's flash forward a little bit. I went to college at the University of California, Davis, started out as a chemical engineer. I started making beer as a hobby, and I'm reluctant to tell this story, but I will because statute of limitations. But my best friend's fake ID was confiscated. And by the way, for people listening, we are so much more responsible today than we were back then.
Yes.
But that being said, it was legal for people to make beer at 18 years old in California.
Oh, okay.
So started making beer as a hobby. And there was a homebrew shop.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that University of California, Davis has a big winemaking program and a beer making program. So I started to do the science, and I was in the stacks of the library doing research on beer science. And we brewed for 2 years every week, and we do split batches. And the reason why I mention that is that everything we did in the beer world has led me to where I am today.
Yeah.
So I worked in beer for many, many years at a very large brewery and at a smaller but very well-known craft brewery. And I've been passionate about the science and how to create flavors and doing little experiments. If you tweak this, you get this flavor. And over time, you start to understand patterns, and maybe something doesn't taste right, so we dig into the process and learn about it. And it's the bridge between science, flavor creation, and art that has really motivated me all these years. And Sazerac reached out, and we started talking, and I left my very comfortable life in my home state and just a spectacularly beautiful brewery with a lot of people I knew to come to Kentucky and make bourbon. And it was a fantastic choice. Beer wants to be bourbon when it grows up.
There you go. That's right.
I'll leave it at that. There's another way that we've talked about that I've said, but just leave it at beer wants to be bourbon when it grows up. So everything I had done prior to this has really very, very thoroughly prepared me to make bourbon and other whiskeys.
So now, when did you come to Kentucky and start with?
In 2018.
Okay, gotcha. So you've about 6 years now, right?
Yes. Interesting side note, my dad was born and raised in Louisville.
Was he really?
Yes.
So did you come back here and visit, or did you have any family or anybody left here, or just?
Very, very distant
Gotcha.
cousins that I've never met.
Yeah. That's got to be kind of a shock moving from California, though, to come. Did you move to Louisville or Bardstown or
Bardstown.
Bardstown.
I moved to Bardstown.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is it's a small town, right?
Small town.
So it's a big difference moving from California to Bardstown, Kentucky, right?
I found it amazing when I was at a stoplight with 4 or 5 cars in front of me and I'd get frustrated. Then I would remember
Yeah, on the 405 or whatever.
what it was like in many other places. I thought, this isn't so bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all, right? So, So Danny, talking about your job, your new position as Master Distiller, and also, I got to get this right, Distillation and Aging Operations Director. Can you talk a little bit about what that job entails and the brands that you work with in that capacity?
Certainly. I think a good way to talk about that is the Master Distillers or the Distillation Aging Operation Manager, in the case of Buffalo Trace, they report to me. So the Master Distiller at Barton, 1792, the Master Distiller at Collingwood, Canada Distillery, and the person who runs the day-to-day operations at Buffalo Trace report to me.
Okay.
So, a big difference is that when I was Master Distiller at Barton 1792, there was very clear ownership. I was responsible for the people that worked there, for the grain coming in, all the way to the point where the barrels are dumped to be ready for packaging. So there was very clear ownership. So now those people report to me, and I direct them. I work together with them in a support role. Mm-hmm. So I am helping them to achieve their goals, our goals. And I get involved in all the issues that are important. We're doing a lot of expansion at Buffalo Trace right now.
Yeah.
We're making a lot of new products and we experiment a lot. We're trying to be as efficient as we can in Bardstown, and we're trying to make as much as the distillery will allow and do it properly. So decisions need to be made in terms of, can we make this change and will it affect flavor or not? Some changes will not affect flavor, and they might get us a little more throughput. Other changes could affect flavor. And I think that, the background I've had positions me very nicely to be able to make decisions. And, and if we don't know, and even if we do think we know, we always do experiments. Let's try this and we'll test it with our panels and see what happens.
Yeah.
So in a distillery, it's a 24/7 operation for the most part. So things happen all the time. There are production issues, throughput. Are we producing as much as we should? There are quality issues. We use raw materials that change season to season. So it's really a very important point to monitor what's important and make decisions to try and continue to do what we do and try to make it a little bit better every day.
Yeah. So are you mostly at the Buffalo Trace campus for your job for the most part?
My office is at the Buffalo Trace Distillery.
Okay. All right.
And I will travel to Bardstown, it's an easy drive.
Sure. Right.
And I go to Canada once in a while to our Canadian distillery.
Okay.
And a few months ago, I did go to India, where I am on the board of our malt whiskey operations.
Yeah, which is cool, because people talk about India as an emerging market for bourbon as well. I don't know if
there's bourbon there. I got out in the trade and I saw some bourbons. There's a passion for it.
Is there really? Okay.
The Paul John whiskey that we are a part of is outstanding.
Yeah,
they do a really good job.
That's a single malt. Is that right?
Yes. They basically do a non-peated and a peated.
Okay.
And a lot of different casks and blending in order to achieve really a really cool array of flavors and whiskeys.
Yeah, I knew that there's a lot of production in India with single malt whiskeys and things, but that's not a avenue I've gone down much. So maybe we'll have to have another show and we could talk more of that type of production.
Sure. Yeah.
So Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this 12? Well, it's aged 12 years. By name.
12 year by name.
A little older by actual age. What do you get?
Spicy.
Yeah.
A nice spicy note on the front of the palate, and also I pick up like a really nice roasted malty note. It has like kind of those dark like roast hazelnut, roast grain notes with it. Good and spicy through there. Peppercorn really shines on this one. For the spice, there's a kind of a nutty peanut flavor as well, but the spice really lingers on the finish. I think.
It is a high rye bourbon too. Our standard grain bill out of Barton 1792 is a moderately high rye bourbon.
Yeah, it definitely shows on this one. I think the rye really shines, but I like that kind of roasty note that I pick up. It's like a little funkier than I would expect out of this product or something out of the 1792 line. It's really enjoyable.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, that spiciness is the first thing that really, I think, hits for me. I still get that subtle hint. To me, it's more subtle than the nose. That cherry still comes through to me on the palate. But that spice just lingers, like you said, Matt, on the palate, the finish. It's just there, front and center. Again, was this 96.6? Is that the proof?
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very easy to drink, though. Very, very nice. Just a really nice blend. You said it's 4 barrels, right?
4-barrel blend. Yep.
Yeah, very, very nice, man. Really
And the one thing that sort of, I go back to this a lot and I taste and I explore and I learn things about it, but totally agree with the spiciness. But when it hits the palate, when it hits your tongue, and you drink it down, there's that spiciness, but between that point of initial taste and the finish, there's some really interesting swirls of sweetness and fruit that I find very unusual, and that's one of the things that I really like about this whiskey.
Yeah, I mean it's very unique. It's very nice, and this was for employees only. Yeah, very, very nice.
It was 2021, right in the middle of that thing that we went through, and it was for National Bourbon Heritage Month. Oh, okay. And we often would do a special release that we would sell to employees on Friday after Thanksgiving for our Lantern Tour. And on this one, we just said, it's been kind of a rough run. So let's just bottle it up for our employees and give them an opportunity to buy one.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, it's nice you guys do that and give them such a nice blend of whiskeys, man, for sure.
Interesting story, too. You said these were kind of lost at the top of the rick house and then brought down to the bottom. Is that common practice?
I got to be careful what I say here. Okay. So
strategically forgotten about, maybe.
So they were at the top of the rick house for about 8.5 years. And then they were brought down for our single barrel selection.
Okay.
And they weren't picked and they were put back, but they were not documented carefully.
Okay.
So we select barrels based on the blend, but we make the decisions based on what's on a sheet of paper. We don't walk around the distillery and say that one and that one and that one. So they were in a spot that wasn't properly documented. So of course we had to correct that because there are rules around that. But were they really lost, or there maybe people had different ideas? I don't know. That's what I'm kind of getting at.
Temporarily misplaced or something.
They came out at a strategic time when we really needed it.
But thoroughly documented the entire time for record keeping purposes.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Boosted morale at the same time. Yeah, so absolutely. That always works. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So Matt, what do you think about this one? Final thoughts on?
Oh, it's excellent. It's really complex. I think there's a lot going on, but at the end of it all, it's just really, really great.
It's pretty oaky, and I like it because there's stuff in the background. The fruits and the way they marry with the oak. The baking scenario that you gave kind of speaks to that too.
Yeah, and the thing about the oak, even though it's present, it's not overly tannic. Like it doesn't dry you out, because there's some, sometimes when you get into whiskeys that are a little bit older, especially ones that I think I mean, 8.5 years in the top of a warehouse, that's gonna really introduce a lot of,
They're
tannic.
hot warehouses.
Yeah.
They get warm.
Yeah, so I mean, you run the risk there that you could really get some dry tasting whiskey, right? But I don't get that. I get that oak aroma and flavor on that, but I don't get that overly tannic drying effect on the finish, which is really cool. So we're basically at the end of round one. Man, that was really fast, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
really fast.
Yeah, I tell you what. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll come back with more with Danny Kahn with Sazerac in just a minute.
Hey, I'm Carrie Van Winkle coming to you from Pappy Company, a brand I co-founded with my sisters and is deeply tied to our family's heritage. Our great-grandfather was the legendary bourbon pioneer Pappy Van Winkle, so we're all about honoring his legacy while reinventing those timeless traditions for our modern lifestyles. Our wide range of products reflect our family values and entrepreneurial spirit, from Pappy branded apparel to specialty foods, aged in our retired bourbon barrels, barware, and premium cigars. Just like our bourbon, we're dedicated to quality small batch production and infusing those elements of joy into daily life. Exclusive to listeners, we're offering a 15% discount on your first order, so go to pappyco.com and use code BourbonLife15. Cheers!
The Stave restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round two of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, down at the end of the flights of the round rectangular table, whatever you want to call it, it's my good friend, Matt. How you doing down there, Matt?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. I just got a cramp in my leg, though, so I'm hanging in there, but I'm good. How are you?
Are you going to have to stand up, Matt?
I needed to stretch out real quick. That happened at a pretty inopportune moment.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well,
no, it's all good.
I need to get you some noon tabs or some
I'm
hydration.
good otherwise. All right, we're back.
Yeah,
okay.
that's how far did you run at lunch, Matt?
9 miles today. On
Just
my lunch.
9 miles at lunch, no big deal, yeah. No wonder you're cramping up, Matt. You just got to be like me and just sit on the couch, sit at your desk and do your work and don't worry about it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
That's what you got to do.
Anyway.
Anyway.
I'm great. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing good, man. Having a good time tonight. We got a guest live in the studio tonight, man. We're killing it with these live guests. This is awesome. I'm having so much fun with this stuff. So much funner than sitting around on your computer, right? Looking at somebody on a screen. So can't complain at all. Drinking some great whiskey in this round. I'm excited about this one, man. We got a double decker lined up on this round. So I do have to tell everybody, of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. Appreciate their sponsorship, everything they do for us. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Matt, with that said, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. Joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is you're getting your Bourbon Life fix, is the Master Distiller and Distillation and Aging Operations Director at Sazerac, Danny Kahn. Danny, welcome on back for the second round.
Great to be here. And, just a comment on running. I only run if I'm being chased.
There you go. See, Matt?
Yeah.
There.
Well, I'm preparing to be chased, I suppose.
Danny's a smart dude. So
Yeah.
Just get on your bike, man. You don't have to worry about running. You can just pedal, you know?
Yeah. I should just start taking naps on my lunch break. It's a lot easier than exercising.
You'd be like George Costanza, just crawl into your desk, set an alarm clock. You'd be all right. Nobody's gonna notice. So, Danny, you brought some great things for us to drink. Really excited about this. This round, we're going to kind of do a little bit of a switch up. We got a double decker. You want to tell everybody what you've poured up for us on this round?
Sure. And, I hope this is good for the people listening. It's certainly good for us, which is an awful thing to say. But these are not products that are available. These are barrel samples, and it's really part of our quality check. We do this kind of check at the distillery on a regular basis. But what is interesting here is we've got about a 12-and-a-half-year-old wheated bourbon that came out of Buffalo Trace. And next to it, we have a 12-and-a-half-year-old wheated bourbon that came out of Barton 1792. So different recipes. They're both wheated bourbons from different distilleries. So it's a fun comparison.
Yeah.
And they came in, by the way, at very high proof. We got one at 134, and I don't know what the proof of the Barton one is. But I'm going to estimate it's going to be just based on how our whiskeys age, based on where they are. It's probably about 140 proof.
Wow.
And these go into the barrel at, you said 114?
The Buffalo Trace one goes in at 114.
114,
Yes.
okay.
Nice. So Matt, we should probably just do one at a time, don't you think? Or do you want to do them
Let's do one at a time.
one at a time?
Let's pace ourselves here.
All right. I was just going to say, I didn't know if you want to try to do a comparison and contrast, but we can do that as we proceed through the segment. So what do you get on the nose on this one? This is the Buffalo Trace sweeter.
Oh, it's absolutely delightful, first and foremost.
Yeah, it is.
Really sweet. A lot of those cherry notes, like kind of those like sweet, decadent, dark cherry, strawberry, almost like candied plum or fig notes, like really dark, rich fruit. Nice vanillas, definitely some influence from oak on there as well. I get that it's a warmer proof. It's certainly not nosing like 134, but I can tell that there's some octane behind this one.
Yep. It's big.
Yeah, but you're right,
absolutely
Matt. I mean, and Danny, you just poured this up. I mean, I know it's a sample bottle, but still, it's not really. I think when you say 134 proof or something like that to people, they automatically assume it's going to be like flammable as soon as it touches their nose. But this really isn't like that whatsoever, right? You get those notes that Matt was talking about. You know, the cherry. I'm on this cherry kick tonight because that's like the first thing that pops out to me on this is that cherry. It reminds me of another wheated bourbon that I've had from Buffalo Trace that was just maybe a couple years older. That's in a specific type of lineup. That's well known and well loved by a lot of people, but it's reminiscent to me of that type of an aroma. So
This might get to be that one day.
okay, there you go. You never know, right? So Danny, what about you? What do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
Oh, so much going on. You know, so when I taste and enjoy a bourbon like this, you know, I'm going to sniff it and take in those aromas probably 20 times for every sip, just because my process is to really try to identify the primary characters, and then, you know, the secondary, those are usually pretty easy. And then I try to go a little deeper and identify what those primary tertiary components are, or the majority of the tertiary components.
Yeah.
So I try to, you know, identify the primary, ignore it, look behind that, ignore it, look behind that. Yeah. And I'm just getting a lot of fruit, a lot of oak complexity that is not tannic, but some caramels. I get a little bit more of that lactone, a little bit of that coconut.
I was just going to say, I just got
Fruits.
coconut, Danny, and I don't know if it's because I was looking for it because of the first pour, but it just, as I sniffed it for like the 10th time, that kind of snuck out there at me.
And it doesn't come out until many years. It's a slow extraction, but it doesn't come out on younger bourbons.
Yeah, very nice. I get, you know, even like a brown sugar type of an aroma as well, a sweetness that comes with it. For me, almost, or maybe even like a toasted type of sugar. Very nice. Anything else on the nose for you, Danny, that you're picking
That
up there?
stands out to me. Well, let's see.
I could see like brulee or like a burnt sugar crust,
yeah.
like kind of deep down in there, almost like a little pie dough, pie crust.
With a cherry compote on top.
There's just so much going on.
I'm all
Yeah.
about dessert tonight, man.
You know, I could just sniff this for hours.
Yeah,
It's
this
so
is-
so beautiful.
Yeah, this could be a candle. I'd light that every night.
Oh, yeah. Well, Danny, you guys got a lot of stuff, you know, specifically talking about Buffalo Trace, since we're on that, drinking the wheated Mashbill. But you guys have had a lot going on there, especially even since the last time we talked. I think you guys were already in the expansion there back in 2022. But huge expansion, like over $1 billion, I believe, total. with
$1.2
everything.
billion.
Yeah, can you kind of talk about everything? And Matt's like, wow, you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge, right? So can you talk about what's been going on through the process and what else is going on now?
You know, the things that I'm not so connected to, a new distribution center was part of it. Expansion of the tour center, which is, you know, really gorgeous. I don't know if, you know, the bottom floor and the top floor, it's bigger. It's really quite incredible. But in my area, we ultimately will be doubling the volume of bourbon that we can produce.
Yeah.
So the bigger components that have been put in service is a new still, which really mimics the existing one. I'll talk about that a little bit and why that's so important. That was online last year. And it doesn't double our capacity because there's other components. So we put in a new still, which again mimics, and I'll talk about that. We've got more mashing capabilities, which of course is a big part of our expansion. Mm-hmm. We put in, grain handling equipment, new hammer mills, bigger hammer mills, and the equipment to transfer that grain. We have new boilers that are being built right now that are going to be going into service. And the last part of the expansion, at least from a production standpoint, we've got cooling, water capacity changes, we've got wastewater treatment capacity changes that are, more capacity and more effective at treating wastewater. Mm-hmm. And the last piece that will go into service are the boilers, but also 8 more fermenters. And then when we have those 8 fermenters in, then we will be essentially double what we were a year or so ago.
And that's under construction, because I was just there the other day. So that's the area of the construction. They're actually putting in like the foundations for those right now, is that right?
So as you come in from the parking lot, if you're facing the tour center, sort of up the hill to the left are where the boilers are going to go. Behind the clubhouse, adjacent to the distillery.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're looking to the right, sort of down the hill from the tour center, that is where the fermenters are going to go. So we're laying foundation, putting in, structural steel,
right,
and that type of stuff. So about a year from now, we'll have those next fermenters online.
Wow. And that's going to increase your capacity. I mean, it's pretty crazy, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a huge production, what you guys are going to be up to.
It's a lot, and not to mention, we're building a lot of warehouses.
Right.
So when we are, making bourbon that has, a lifespan of 8 years or 15 years or 20 years, it's got to sit there for a long time. So we're building a lot of warehouses too.
Yeah. And we talked about, when Harlan was on the show a couple of years ago, we talked about the fact, there's only so much space you guys have there on site, right? So, warehouses, you've got to look other places. Wherever you can find the land to really build them, right?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. So, but that's great to see you guys doing all the expansion there. But the still, can you talk about that?
Sure.
The new still, how you guys did that?
So, there's a lot of science in what we do. There's a lot of things we can measure. There's a lot of things we can analyze for. There's a lot of process checks we can make. We can check temperatures and flow rates and, all these things. But there are certain things that we cannot measure for. So our goal is to continue to make Buffalo Trace products as we enjoy them today. So we have duplicated the still in essentially every single way. There are things about that still that maybe aren't as important as they used to be, but we built them into the new still just so the process is the same. So if we've got a pipe that maybe condenses a little bit of liquid and it provides a little bit of reflux in the still, we built it that way in the new still to duplicate it exactly as we did before. And what is, to me, really phenomenal, when we started up the still, I was there, and we would run the same, beer, same wash through both stills from the same tank, and we would compare it and taste it. And from the minute we started up, it was extraordinarily close. And with a few tweaks, it's indistinguishable.
Yeah.
So that's very, very important to us.
Because that's crazy. But now you guys, to the point of kind of taking paper and doing tracing of the interior. Was that right? Did you guys, or did I make that up?
I don't think I know every single detail.
Indiana Jones, where he's tracing over the
I was thinking
tablet.
It seems there were
to get
certain elements on the interior that, like you said, aren't used necessarily anymore, but there are patterns from the interior of the.
Well, you know what? I did hear a story. Somebody, so our sieve trays are, of a certain size and certain hole pattern. I think somebody did do that, actually. Now that you mention that, I'm not just, catering to you.
You're not trying to make me feel good.
No, I actually...
Just keep drinking, Mark.
I actually heard, and I'm going to verify this when I go back, but I actually heard that there was a physical verification so that the drawing matched the reality. Yeah. Years and years ago, when things were put in, we didn't quite have the same level of documentation that I think we do today.
Right.
So that... I think you're right, yes.
Okay. I was I know somebody had told me that somewhere. I'd heard that, and I thought, I'm going to ask Danny about that. So it was a surprise question.
Yeah. No. It wasn't that long ago that I came across that story. It probably is 2 months ago.
Okay.
That came up.
All right. Well, then I don't feel crazy. So, guys, we got another drink to get to. Let's talk about the finish and the palate on this first, the Wheater from Buffalo Trace. Matt, now that you're taking a drink again, sorry about that. What do you pick up on terms of the palate and finish on this one?
So I dropped just a little bit of water in it.
Okay.
And I've noticed the nose has really opened up. A lot more fruit, a lot sweeter. It brings out more depth. But with the palate, it has those fruited notes again, those like really dark red wine notes, almost like a sweetness coming across as like a dessert wine or like a port, kind of like that has that like earthy sweetness, but also that like pungency to it as well. Nice notes from the wheat come across as like toasted bread, almost like I know sourdough isn't necessarily wheat, but it kind of has like that toasted bread, sourdough kind of aroma to it, and taste really warm, nice cinnamon, good heat, good spice with it as well. Just really beautiful. A little bit of water really, really brings some of those notes out.
Yeah, I found the heat with the proof.
Yeah, right?
I couldn't find it on the nose, but man, I found it on the palate, which is, that's in my wheelhouse, right? Because I love higher proof whiskeys. We talked about the Stag earlier, right? So that's one of my favorites. Just absolutely love it. But yeah, man, a lot of the same things you said. There is almost like on the palate, before I just watered it down some, but kind of like an earthiness to it. There's something about it. I don't know if it's the barrel influence or something, but there's a note to it that gives it kind of this earthiness. Almost like, I hate when people say funk, because that has negative connotations to it, but it almost gives it, like and if you say musty, that sounds weird, but it's in a good way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So,
back to the first sample we tasted, I spoke of the aromas and flavors of the warehouse.
Yeah.
And, musty has negative connotations, but not necessarily so. I think it's very positive connotation.
Okay. Well, that's the way I meant it. So that was kind of coming through to me before I watered it down. But Danny, what else? What do you pick up?
Yeah, I get all that. I think what stands out to me is that there is a texture and a viscosity that is soothing and comforting, and it just means the flavor lasts for a long time. So it sits on your tongue, and it stays there, and it's got good flavor, and you can see the viscosity in the way it drains down the side of the glass. And I think what that does, it enhances the sweetness and the fruits and the bready characters that are coming through. So it's just really incredible.
Yours is draining. Mine's like a jar of peanut butter. I got to scrape it off the side of the glass here. It's so thick. I love it.
I watered mine down and just took another drink of it. And it was just super, super inviting. And like I said, still reminds me of a bottle that I got last year that was a few years older, but we did Mashbill. So a lot of similarities to me.
The fun thing about bringing this in is that this is the kind of thing that people can't normally get. I personally, this is my personal preference, prefer, and this varies, every bourbon's a little different, but 105 is kind of the sweet spot for me. That's where I get the most aroma, the most flavor, and it's where I enjoy it the most. Not always, but in general, that's kind of where I land.
Yeah. Something about higher proofs that just, I don't know, but watering it down makes a difference, like you said.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you ever have a hard time convincing people that sometimes it's okay to water down, because it brings out so many different flavors, especially like if you're able to water something down like in a barrel? I know a lot of people think like, I want it out of the barrel, I want it hot, but that water plays such an instrumental role in chasing out different flavors and aromas from the oak, not even withstanding what it does in a glass.
Oh, absolutely. And I did a really interesting experiment. I was doing a tasting for a particular group, and we were encouraged to bring several samples. What I did was I had a very special, I think it was a wheated bourbon. It came in 145 proof. And I took that same bottle and I diluted it to 3 other proofs. The lowest was 90, and I think it was 115 and 125 and then 145. And I didn't tell anybody it was the same bourbon, just cut to different proofs. Mm-hmm. And this was a really educated, passionate group of bourbon geeks. And I really enjoyed this group. And of course, I say it in a very positive way, but every single person found the 115 proof to be the most flavorful and most enjoyable. Now, when I shared what it was, they all were wowed. One person says, you know what, go back and I actually like the 145 proof better.
Yeah.
I had to justify his
Yeah.
position. But there is a reason why, with a little dilution, flavors become more apparent. Now, at the distillery, we taste at 40 proof, not because it's the most enjoyable, but because you can learn a lot more about the bourbon at diluted proofs.
Right.
So we taste as a matter of routine, and also you don't get it saturated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd heard that before, that it's proofed down significantly just to be able to detect any notes, but also flaws as well. I think they seem to show up more prevalent or easier, I guess, at lower proof.
Everything, again, it's not as enjoyable, it may not be as strong, but with the trained panel, you can learn more about it. Now, if we're going to create a new recipe, we will taste it at different proofs to try to determine which proof we think we want to release it at. So
Gotcha.
if it's not a barrel proof whiskey, we may taste it at different proofs to say, you know what, this is where we want to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we'll always taste it at the proof it's going to be released at to verify what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, let's jump over to whiskey number 2 for this round. I think what we're going to do, because we're running kind of deep into this segment, so let's do the nose on this one, and then we can come back and we'll finish the palate and finish, and we'll do the fourth pour, finish it out. Will that work?
That'll be.
Yeah, because I don't want to have to drag out for like a 30-minute. I don't want to put Danny through a 40-minute second segment.
I'm enjoying this. I'm good.
Matt, what do you pick out on the nose on this one?
I think the nose on this one comes across to me a little hotter. I think there's more ethanol, more proof is coming through on the nose. The fruit is there. Those dark fruits are still around, but I don't think I'm picking them up kind of as savory. There's more spice component, more heat component on the nose with this one, and maybe a little bit more barrel oak. Whereas on the first one, I got like sweet toasted oak flavors. This is more of like sharp, pungent oak and barrel flavor.
Yep.
I can't add much to that. I get cherry like pipe tobacco.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of.
I don't think you're wrong.
Kind of the first thing that jumped out at me is almost this tobacco-ish type of aroma, but the cherry just seems to be a consistent theme for me tonight.
I was calling out tobacco, but I also get a little like cacao, a little bit of a dark, bitter chocolate in the aroma. Mm-hmm. It's got a little bit of a fruity component, but it reminds me of chocolate. So this one is definitely going to be, it's probably close to 10 proof points higher. Maybe not quite that much, but probably close to 10 proof points higher than the first one. Mm-hmm. And it was also aged in a much warmer warehouse. So there are some big differences here.
Gotcha. So was this higher up in a warehouse like the first one?
Not insulated. Higher up and not insulated.
Okay,
yes.
Gotcha. Higher proof, but a weeded mash bill. So,
weeded mash bill, yep.
Yeah, very, very fun. Now, the two distilleries, different yeast strains that are used at
different yeast strains, yep.
Okay, so we got that variable as well.
Grain bills are going to be different.
Yeah.
Different yeast strains, yep.
Yeah, but very nice on this. So, man, I know that the ethanol comes a lot more than the first one, but I think I like the nose on this one better. I don't know why. I know, Matt, you're just yeah, but for some reason for me, I kind of like that. It's got more of a punch to it to me, and I kind of like that. So, but I tell you what, I'm looking at the timer. I'm just thinking maybe we should take a break and then come back and we could talk about the palate and the finish on this one, and then jump to our final pour if that'll work. So we're not going to run like a 2-hour episode or anything tonight. So, all right, guys, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more with Danny Kahn with Sazerac in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
Bluegrass Distillers is a craft distillery with a passion for producing exceptional bourbon. They're committed to the art of distillation, using locally sourced grains to create a distinct and flavorful bourbon that captures the essence of Kentucky's rich whiskey heritage. Bluegrass Distillers takes pride in their small batch, hands-on approach, ensuring quality and attention to detail in every bottle they make, like their limited release 9-year-old Elkwood Reserve Bourbon, which is currently available for purchase at their brand new Visitor Center in Midway, Kentucky, their distillery in Lexington, and select stores throughout Kentucky. And with their new distillery slated to begin operation in spring of 2024, you'll be able to pick up even more exceptional spirits from them, like their wheated bourbon and their blue corn bourbon in the spring and fall. For more details and to plan your visit, check out their website at bluegrassdistillers.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there?
Mark, I'm good. How are things down at Mission Control?
You know what? I'm hanging in there. Just telling you guys before we started that the high proof is starting to maybe kick in just a touch. So yeah, man. So this is fun. I enjoy it. We're having a good time tonight. I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. So happy we were able to get this put together, man. So this is a great show. Drinking some great bourbon tonight. Really excited about this. So I do have to say, of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast. I don't have to say it. I want to say it because I love Liquor Barn. We go way back, like 30 plus years, you know, so I've been a Liquor Barn guy for a long, long time, back into the late 80s. The OG over on Richmond Road was the first one. I used to go there all the time. So we appreciate their sponsorship and support. We appreciate all of our sponsors, everything they do for us. Couldn't do this show without their help. So Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody who we have with it? He didn't leave, so he's still here.
That's right.
We're fortunate, right?
That's right. Danny Kahn is the Master Distiller and Distillation and Aging Operations Director at Sazerac, and we are so happy he's back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. But Danny, welcome on back.
Pleasure to be here, and maybe we just do a fourth impromptu.
How many people have said that?
Bloopers,
man?
right. Bloopers.
I know.
Yeah.
You're not. I mean, we've had several people that have said that now, and I'm just like, man, maybe I need to start one of those Patreon accounts. I've got one, but I don't do anything with it. Have you ever heard of Patreon? People like influencers set these up, and
a little bit.
They have subscriptions, so people pay, and like you have different levels, and you can offer certain things. So I'm thinking maybe we need to do a Patreon and have the fourth round of the Bourbon
extra credit round. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're drinking some good stuff. So we are finishing up with the Bardstown wheated bourbon on this one. This was around 139, maybe 140, something like that, possibly. I think.
I'm gonna estimate it's in the low 140s, 140ish.
Okay.
It's going to be very close.
Yeah. Very nice. So when we talked about the nose, we'll do the palate and the finish here in just a minute or so. So then, we talked about all the expansion, everything that's going on, especially there at Buffalo Trace. One of the questions I think people are curious about, you guys are growing, the bourbon market is expanding crazy, not just here, but internationally. We kind of talked about that as well a little bit. So how do you guys, meet the demand and, maintain still your commitment to quality and excellence and integrity, everything you guys do? I mean, how do you manage to balance all that?
Wow, how much time do we have left?
Yeah,
because you said that's a load.
Yeah.
So we think we understand the demand, and that's why we're going through an expansion. And we, as we talked about a little bit before, how we set up the expansion, it is critical that we match what we know today, and we match flavor profiles. And flavor, which is the ultimate indicator of quality. I mean, the reality is if it doesn't taste good, what's the point? Our focus, our number one focus on what we produce is flavor, because if it doesn't taste good, what is the point? And I don't know if people realize how hard it is to make bourbon. There are process upsets, there are changes to raw materials, so there are things that we do as master distillers to maintain flavor profiles. So that really is the focus of what we do. And that sort of manifests itself in a lot of ways. I mean, we've got an extraordinarily complex experimental program. And horrible thing to say, because I'm not going to talk about the experiments we're doing.
Oh, man.
But if you think about all the great products that have come out, I mean, tough one to talk about, but, Eagle Rare 25 was not just an accident. It wasn't barrels that were lost and say, hey, look what we found.
Yeah.
But there were things in the works and design of experiment applied to try and understand how can we make better bourbon. So we have our warehouse P, which is a different temperatured warehouse, and that enabled us to do things that really are a wow factor. We have warehouse X, which is our experimental warehouse, where we have the ability to control atmospheric conditions in different ways, and we have sensors in the barrels, and we are able to track data points and compare taste. So although that speaks to innovation and potential new products in the future, it also helps us understand what we're doing today. Honor tradition, embrace change is the expression of Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
And that is so meaningful because I like tradition a lot. And if we're tasting barrels, there's variability. There's a little bit of natural variability in the process, but every once in a while we'll come across a honey barrel, a barrel that is just different than the rest and just really, really good. Now, to put that in perspective, I taste a fair amount of bourbon in my job, and I may only taste 15 or 20 honey barrels a year. So it's not like, ooh, this one's a little better, this one is, wow, how did that get there? So it might prompt an understanding of how do we do that every time? How do we get that level of consistency and that level of achievement? We have yet to make the perfect bourbon. We're still trying. We're trying to get there a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important part of what we do. And you all remember that a couple years ago we did not release Stag, George T. Stag.
Yeah.
And that was a hard decision, and a lot of people, a lot of key tasters tasted and made that decision. And the decision was, this is great bourbon, but it does not match what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So we had to cancel it. There were no other reasons for it other than the fact that it did not match our flavor profile. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I kind of drifted away from your question, but how do we manage growth and quality? Well, quality will remain our priority.
Yeah.
And internationally, what's in store for us internationally?
Yeah.
Well, we have a Buffalo Trace house, a Buffalo Trace distillery. It's a storefront. It's an educational facility. And unfortunately, I probably don't know as many details about that as I should, but we see a huge opportunity in market, and we're out there trying to educate people. And I think it's being well received, and we'll see where that goes.
Where's that located?
It is in, it's in London.
It's in London, right? That's what I was thinking. Okay.
It is in London.
Yeah.
I forget exactly where. I've not been there personally.
Yeah.
But
field trip.
We're I like that idea. So yes, there are opportunities in the U.S. and there's opportunities internationally, but really, it has to be of the right quality, and that will remain the focus.
Yeah, which is great to hear. And obviously, as fans, Matt and I are fans, obviously, and a lot of our listeners, of course, are fans as well. So obviously, that's top priority to everybody. They want to make sure that. I think sometimes you see. Well, I don't want to say there are distilleries that cut corners or things like that, but I think, when you have this increased pressure in terms of demand for your product, there's that urgency. We got to get things out. We got to get something out there to people.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that you guys are, doing it right and doing it the way it needs to be done to maintain the quality of what you put out.
It's important. And, and I'll share a story a while back. There was, based on how we produced the whiskey 8 years earlier, we had a little bit of a gap for one of our distilleries. And, they asked me, hey, just for a period of time, can we, cut the age? And this was a sales decision. Mm-hmm. And they did it the right way. They talked to the master distiller, the person in charge of quality. And the answer was, well, let me taste them and find out. And the answer was, no, we can't do that. Yeah. And, so there's the balance, we're going to miss out on sales, but the quality's not good enough. So, maybe we should make the sales and people will understand.
Yeah.
And the leadership team decided that the taste and the quality that, I found that whiskey to be at was not appropriate. So we had a gap. We had a hole.
Yeah.
We didn't sell as much as we could have because the quality was not there.
But that's good to hear that the leadership team aligned with you as well and said, we should release something, we should get it profit, we should meet our numbers, but we're not going to.
Yeah, and and I want to say this in a way that doesn't sound negative. The salespeople, their responsibility are sales.
Yeah.
And if they say we can sell it, they told me, it says, yeah, I understand, but we are going to present this as an opportunity to the very highest level of leadership. And when they did, our very highest level leadership person said, what does the master distiller think? And I said, I don't think it's ready. And he said, there's your answer. And they just did. They agreed. They understood, but they had to present an option.
Sure.
They presented an option. They weren't trying to cut corners. I want to be really clear on that. But that was, I'm not going to tell them how to sell stuff. That's not my wheelhouse. So it was a group informed decision.
Yeah.
And I was impressed by that.
Well, and I think, you talked about the Stag decision. I mean, that was huge. A lot of people were like, what's going on? But Matt, did you say you just got to try the 2023?
I did just get to try the 2023.
I did as well, the Bourbon Classic, and that was probably, William LaRue Weller is probably always going to be, of the BTAC lineup, is probably always going to be my number one.
Me too.
That's just the way, there's something about it that is just so unique, and year after year, that is so good. But I'm telling you, I thought of the ones I got to taste, and I think I tasted through the whole lineup. That Stag was actually my number two. It's
pretty incredible.
It was my number two. And I was like, that was great to see. That's like the great big comeback story, right?
Yeah, and it was 100% based on quality.
Yeah.
Nobody enjoyed not releasing it. There were no, attempts at trying to create scarcity. That was not the case. It was 100% a quality decision.
Yeah. Which is great. The funny thing is our sponsor Liquor Barn's having their Pappy BTAC raffle this week. So this show comes out Friday, so Saturday morning.
So you know where to find us.
We will be there. We're actually going to do a live podcast up there. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward. Maybe we can get lucky this year and score me a bottle of the William LaRue Weller or the Stag. It was delicious. So I was so happy a couple weeks ago when I got to taste that. So kudos to you guys, for coming back strong and really knocking it out on that one. So guys, let's talk about this Bardstown wheat. And Matt, what do you get in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
I think the palate on this one is a little sharper. It's like spicier around the edges, just drinks kind of like sharper, hotter, spicier, more peppery, less of those like delicate red fruits and like orchard fruit notes. But it also brings out, I think, to me, this is more of like that fresh baked wheat, almost like wheat, like crust of wheat bread kind of flavors. I think this one really, really shines the grain of the wheat on it, but warm, drinks sharp, kind of prickly.
Yeah, and I like it. I mean, the first one was, I don't want to say subdued, but for my palate, it was just a very, creamy, nice feeling from start to finish. This one was kind of like punchy, like, hey, I'm here, I'm high proof. And I really enjoyed this one. It's different. Like you said, Danny, that was really cool to be able to compare these two, wheated mash bills and just the differences between the two of them. So what about you in terms of the palate and finish on this one?
I think the first one was a little softer, a little fruitier. The other one was definitely a little hotter. I got more flavors. I got more complexity. This would be a situation where if I had both these on my shelf, I would come home and decide, what pour do I want to try tonight? It might be this one half the time, and I'm not trying to be, fair and politically correct. It might be this one half the time because they're very different.
Yep.
So sometimes I might feel more strongly about a little bit more of the caramel, subtle fruit, softer. Sometimes I might feel more interested in the hotter, spicier, but in many ways more flavorful. So it really depends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting experiment. Yeah. Similar mash bills from two different distilleries.
Yeah,
similar
absolutely.
ages and proof points.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we've got a fourth and final pour. You want to tell everybody what this one's going to be?
Sure. This is also, again, something that is, I thought you guys would find interesting. Don't know what this will be yet, but it's also about a 12-and-a-half-year-old BT1. And it comes in at 139 proof.
Gotcha. So BT1 lineup for people listening, that would be like Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, Stag, and what else?
Those are the big hitters.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, just thinking through that. Very nice. Matt, what are you getting on the nose on this one?
This one, kind of similar to what we had, I think, on the first round with the 1792. I'm picking up like a couple different directions. There's definitely that fruity, luscious, rich, like cherries, dark Bing cherry, almost like cranberry type note. But then there's also, like, it goes to the spicy, kind of nutty, roasted aroma side of things. Yeah, it's almost like a, Mark, you were talking about like some kind of a funky, like mossy.
Almost a musty, right? I was going to say the same thing on
almost
this
kind of like
barrel.
this mossy, like, I don't want to say like fermented meat, but think like aged, like meat kind of like a salami kind of has that, like nice aroma about it.
Yeah.
Just something, kind of a weird way to describe
Good descriptor.
it.
Yeah.
But it has that note to it.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, and E.H. Taylor's a Mashbill #1 too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, I know there was another bigger one that I was thinking of, and I was like, I flashed to my tubes over there just in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, E.H. Taylor, #1. Yeah, Matt, I mean, great descriptors on this one, but yeah, that kind of, the first thing I noticed was that, not the first thing, but kind of that, again, funky, and I hate to say that word, but just that different influence. I don't know if that maybe comes from the warehouse or if it's from the barrel, Danny, or if you're even picking it up on this one or not.
I certainly get, I think what dominate, when I talk about my primary flavor characteristics, I think I get barrel character, which is in itself very complex. I mean, I'm getting, some of the baking spices, I'm getting, a hint of spiciness that comes from the rye that's part of BT1. But I also get some of the caramel and sugars and fruits. But I tend to get more barrel character out of this than sort of oxidized congeners and fermentation notes. But super, complex. There's a lot going on with this whiskey.
Yeah.
A little bit of a floral note. That is, again, not fruity, but it's not spicy. It's somewhere in between, and I sort of categorize that as floral.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. So, Danny, let's just talk about, I mean, you talked about the distillery, Buffalo Trace, specifically the expansion, the visitor center. I mean, you guys have really embraced that. I mean, I think of all the distilleries out there, you guys are definitely in the top 2 or 3 that are doing that. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means in terms of being able to open up and allow visitors to come in and spend time with you guys there?
Sure. That's outside of my wheelhouse because, at Buffalo Trace, at Sazerac, our master distillers are really totally production focused, but we still get a chance to interact with consumers. And it's often I'll see Freddie. Everyone knows Freddie at Buffalo Trace, and I'll come around the corner and there's Freddie, and I'm happy, but I'm also on a mission. I got to be somewhere, and it will take 10 minutes automatically. And I guess what I'm getting at is, Freddie is the epitome of telling stories that are relatable.
Yeah.
And there's a story at Buffalo Trace. There are layers upon layers of changes that have taken place, that go back a long, long time. And, we're unique as far as I know. First of all, we get an enormous number of visitors. When I come in, when I'm late and I get in at 7:15, there's already 20 or 30 people waiting in line to get in.
It's crazy.
When it opens at 9 o'clock. It's not uncommon to have a few hundred visitors waiting in line Saturday morning before we open. But we also don't charge for our tours.
Yeah.
And it's a historic landmark.
Yeah.
And there's just a beautiful story to be told. The grounds are beautiful. The whiskey's wonderful. People learn. They come there for enjoyment. Everybody is happy. It's an incredible place. And I will be honest, when I come into work every morning and when I go back to my car, we park pretty far away from where my office is because we leave those parking spots for the visitors. So I park a long ways away, but I enjoy that walk. I enjoy walking through the ground and seeing some of the old warehouses, and I just think about the history, and I'm not BSing about that. I find it to be very cool. I enjoy it a lot.
And I agree with that. We did a barrel pick down at 1792, and the one thing that Matt and I both commented about, it's like you kind of go in there and it's not geared towards visitors, right? I mean, it's production.
Yeah. And we don't have tours there. We have VIP tours, but we don't do open to the public tours anymore.
So you go in there and you feel it's very, I don't want to say industrial, but I mean, it's distilling. I mean, it's making whiskey, right? And then you go to Buffalo Trace and you get the history and the grounds and the buildings and the black mold fungus that's growing on the trees and the fence rows and everything. And it's a different experience, but it is one of my favorite places to go.
It's gorgeous.
It's absolutely gorgeous. So if people haven't been there, they definitely need to check it out.
In 1792 is genuine and gritty.
Sure.
And I think that those are the two best words to describe what we do there: genuine and gritty.
Yeah. I like gritty. That's a good descriptor.
Yeah.
Walking in there, you in the best way possible, you almost feel like you've just finished a day's work. Like you feel,
Well, you're in
the
it.
gestalt of it.
You were in the process when you're touring in 1792.
Yeah, yeah. So, gosh, man, we're almost the end. We got to have some more conversation. I'm looking at the clock, and I shouldn't have done that, right? So, can we talk about the future a little bit, though? Talk about the future of Sazerac, what that looks like. Anything exciting that you can share with us, maybe? Little secrets?
No, not really.
No, damn it.
Well,
show's over, folks. Sorry.
What I will share is that there's a lot of very passionate people, and in my world, we do experimental meetings a couple times a year. Now internally, we've got experimental talks on a regular basis, but we do big meetings a couple times a year, and we are really forbidden to talk about it. Not just externally, but even internally. If people are not in this meeting, we do not talk about it outside of that meeting. We don't know necessarily what's going to come out of that program. We do experiments that are interesting, and we use our knowledge and our creativity to try and come up with something new. Mm-hmm. And a lot of experiments, and I don't know what the math is, but a lot of experiments don't work. And if you've been to one of our sensory labs, there are a whole bunch of experimental bottles with a big stamp on the side that says failed. So there are experiments that have failed that we've not released, but we keep those around because they're educational. Mm-hmm. And, it speaks to our focus on flavor and quality. And although flavor is subjective, there are certain quality things that we will not allow to go through. Yeah. And you don't know often until you try. This may sound like a great idea, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I will share some of our experiments have failed miserably, and I won't even talk about those, even though they're off the table. There are some that were just bad, but you don't know till you try.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I think one of the cool things you guys did, is it the single oak project? Is that the actual?
Fascinating.
We went when I was there. Can't remember what it was for, but they were telling us all about it. And I was just like, I had no idea. I mean, just the variances between the trees, like the upper half of the tree, the lower half of the tree, trees on a hill, trees in a valley, trees, wood from the northern facing side of a tree. I mean,
it's amazing.
It's crazy. So, and that would be a whole podcast probably in and of itself to talk about that. But you guys, how many different barrels or different, do you know?
Oh, it's a few hundred.
I mean, it's crazy,
and
right?
Different, locations, different ages, different environmental conditions.
Yeah.
Top, bottom. There are a lot of different variables. Yeah.
And that's just really specifically geared toward the oak, right?
Absolutely. And then we do, analysis on it to understand what's in the bourbon. And then we also do sensory and try and correlate the sensory with the analysis with, the variable of that experiment to try and, again, learn something. So, again, honor tradition, embrace change. In the process of doing experiments, which is, embracing change, we learn a lot about how to make bourbon more consistently. Mm-hmm. And I've always been a fan of the tradition. And again, my job is not to change the flavor of Buffalo Trace or 1792 or Collingwood, but if we've got a little bit of variability, which is normal. I don't know if people understand that, but that is normal. The idea is, how do we make it the best we can make it every time?
Yeah.
So if we've got one that's outstanding, one that's really good but not as good as this one, how do we get it there? So by doing experiments, we learn how to honor tradition.
Yeah, and I think that's great. When they were explaining that, especially the oak project, I was like, I had no idea the extents that you guys went.
It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, let's talk about the whiskey here that we got poured up on this final round here. This is the Mashbill number 1. And this one again, what was the proof on it? 130?
134.
4? All right. Matt, what do you...
No, I'm sorry. This one was
139.
139,
right?
yep.
Mm-hmm. What do you get in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
At first, I drank it without any water in it, and it was warm.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But I put a little water in, and it brings out some more of the flavor. I get good influence from the corn. It has like caramel corn, kettle corn, like Cracker Jack kind of notes to me. Sort of that popcorn, buttery taste comes around, a little butterscotch with it as well. Nice warm finish, good like cinnamon, good heat, nice presence of that oak down. And then the finish kind of like starts at the back of the palate and then works its way back to the front of the palate as well. It's really, really long, super long finish that to me just like comes back around to the front of the palate.
I keep getting like cinnamon red hots, man. It's like this nice hot cinnamon flavor, but so sweet as well. Mm-hmm. But then I kept getting almost like a flavor of almost like a chocolate or a mocha of some form, which sounds crazy.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. All right. I thought I was nuts because I'm like, I kept tasting it and tasting it. I'm like, somewhere in the mid palate, I just kept getting this, like almost like you have a chocolate bar in your mouth, like a solid dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Piece
It's kind of like that dark chocolate, that dry, dark chocolate note.
Yeah.
I often describe bourbons with that cacao, and
Okay,
if you there's this huge varietal component too. I've tried chocolates from various regions, and they have different flavors and spices and fruits, and it's really consistent with some of the things that we're tasting here. So that's a common descriptor for me.
Are you a coffee guy as well?
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Okay. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. There you go. The nuances of coffee. If people only knew, right?
If they only knew.
No doubt. So, well, guys, we're at the end of the round. Man, gosh, that was
Into the show.
Into the show. That's right. We're going to have to do a fourth bonus round.
Yeah, bonus
we
round.
We won't do that.
Off air.
Danny, what's been your favorite part of your journey so far?
Oh my goodness.
If there is a favorite part.
There are so many components. As I said before, right now I'm in a support role. So I get an opportunity to work with a lot of great people and help to educate them. I have a little bit of experience, and I really enjoy sharing knowledge with people who want to learn and make things better. I like the discussions. I like the... we've got some supervisors that are entry-level people that really know the nuts and bolts of the process. They may not know the science, so we work together really well and help stimulate the next generation of master distillers. That's an important part. But I love learning and understanding how flavor is created. There is some good science behind it. There's a lot of stuff we don't know. But when you learn that this particular flavor over here comes from this part of the process, it gives you a focus when you're trying to troubleshoot or make something new. So the science, the flavor creation, the social importance, the history, it's really hard to answer what my favorite part is.
Sure.
I really enjoy the industry as a whole. And, my family continue to mock me in a very positive way, because even when I'm at home drinking milk, I swirl my milk. And there are certain places I won't buy milk because I obsess over flavor, and I think about it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I just like what we do here with whiskey.
Yeah.
I like young whiskey sometimes. I like real, I don't drink, William the Weller every night. I've always had a hard time saying that. George C. Stave is so much easier.
Yeah.
But I don't drink those. They're scarce, and we save them for the public. So I don't get opportunity to, find where the stash of those are. But there's a lot of great bourbons out there that are reasonably priced.
Yep.
And I love it. I love everything about the industry.
Yep, that's great. So where can people get more information about all the different products and everything? I know you're not the marketing guy, so everybody has their own website, I guess, right?
Yeah, Buffalo Trace website, of course, all the brands that we make. And there's some really interesting information on the history. There's some interesting information on experiments that we've released.
Oh, okay.
It will not share experiments that are yet to come, but it will talk about what we make at Buffalo Trace. And 1792 has a website. So there's social media websites out there that'll help them decide.
Awesome. Well, Danny, any final thoughts before you wrap it up tonight?
Thank you for having me. This has been fun. It gives me a chance to taste whiskeys and talk about them with two people I admire. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. Matt, final thoughts before you close it out tonight, man.
Danny, this has been a treat. Thanks for taking us down a path of your products that the public won't ever get to try. That truly isn't what we were tasting tonight. It's not lost on Mark and I. This was really special, and getting to share it with you especially was even better.
Very cool. Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
No doubt about that, for sure. I looking around the table, though, I noticed I'm the only one with the empty glasses.
It's because you live in this house, Mark.
I live in the studio,
live here.
right? Yeah, that's right. I don't have to walk up 15 stairs and I'm good to go.
Or you can just stay down here.
Or I can just sleep on the couch or the love seat, right?
Couch it up.
We used to record, when we first started recording before we did video, Danny, we used to sit on the couch and the chairs over there and record. So yeah, we made it a little more professional now that we got cameras. But Danny, thanks so much for joining us, man. I always enjoy getting to run into you when I see you. And one thing you were talking about, when you see Freddie, you stop and talk. And when I was over there for
and not just Freddie, by the way, our tour guides are all
you do, and that's what I was going to say.
Freddie's
because
special.
When I was on a tour with, I don't know if it was Bourbon Classic or what it was, that we were there. And I mean, you were walking through, I think you had a clipboard with you, and you just had this look like you're focused. And then you see the group and the tour guide, and you stop and talk to him. Then you stop and talk to us. And you're there for like 10 or 15 minutes just talking to us. And, initially you could tell that, yes, you had a mission, you were going somewhere, but you took the time to stop and talk to us, which I think speaks volumes about the type of person that you are.
Well, thank you.
So I respect that and admire what you do and appreciate, you taking the time to join us here tonight. And especially coming over to the beautiful Bourbon Life Studios.
It's awesome. I love it.
But we're going to do another show, and we're going to talk all the other things like coffee and India and all that stuff. So we appreciate you being here very much, Danny. Thanks a lot. And thanks for the great whiskey. This was a very special experience for us to get to share that with you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. Like Matt says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you join us, we appreciate you checking us out. We do want to thank again all of our sponsors, everything they do for us. We couldn't do the show without all their help. And if you want to find out more information about us, you can get us on Instagram or Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. I think we're up to about 2,000 people in there now. So check that out. We got some good conversations going on in there. Also, YouTube. We're on YouTube. So starting to grow. We're up to 3,500 subscribers now, Matt.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. So we're pushing that. So we're getting there. So check us out. Of course, this will be on YouTube as well. So if you listen to the podcast, you can also watch it now. So check us out on YouTube and subscribe. It helps us out quite a bit. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions or anything for the show, we'd always love to hear that. If you feel so inclined, leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform, as long as it's positive. We appreciate that. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up and send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Discover the best of Ireland and America in every sip. Keeper's Heart Irish American Whiskey crafted by a legendary Irish distiller, is a unique blend of smooth Irish whiskey and bold American whiskey that has garnered over 130 awards in just 2 short years. Whether finding the perfect gift for occasions like Mother's or Father's Day, Keeper's Heart is a perfect choice. Enjoy it neat, on the rocks, or in cocktails, and savor the perfect balance of flavors in every sip. Personalize a label for free on their website and use code KEEPERS10 for $10 off your order on keepersheartwhiskey.com. Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their exclusive Behind the Beam tour and monthly Claremont Supper Club events, which will feature their Overholt special releases at the April 18th event. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family.